Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Elephants. I'm your host, Destiny Farley, and today I'm interviewing Natalie Dempsey, who has been a single mom since she was 21 years old. There's a lot of different stigmas and stereotypes attached to single moms. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. It's also becoming more and more commonplace for kids to grow up in separate households or with just one parent. And we'll touch on that trend as well and some of the implications that come with that. But I asked Natalie to come on today and explain what her experience has been like being a single mom through most of her 20s. Our 20s are a very developmental time for us as adults, let alone while also having to raise a child. So she has some really valuable insight into that experience. So Nat, can you briefly just introduce yourself and then start by sharing how you felt when you first found out that you were pregnant with your daughter when you were 21.
Okay, so I'm Natalie. I'm 26, turning 27 soon. I'm from here. I'm from Vegas. When I found out I was pregnant, it was definitely like the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my whole life. Like I remember looking at the test and my hands were like shaking and I just felt like it was like not real. So it took a long while for me to like accept the fact that I was even pregnant. But yeah, I took 2 tests back to back. So I was like, okay, fuck, like this is seriously, this is real.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was super scary. I just was like so like out of my mind. Like it took me a while, like I said, to even like come to terms with the fact that it was real. I feel like even throughout my whole pregnancy, I was like, wow, just like can't believe it. Until your baby's like actually there. Like, you're just like, this is, like, surreal.
Mm-hmm. How long had you been with her dad before you got pregnant?
It was about 2 years, but very much, like, on and off. And at that time, we were, like, not in a good place at all. So that's another reason I was, like, even more scared because I knew that it was just going to be hard regardless.
So what made you decide to keep it? Like, I don't know what your stance on abortion is, but did you have thoughts where you were like, I don't know if I should keep it?
Yeah, I'm very much, like, pro-choice. But I knew, like, ever since I was little that I wanted to be a mom, and I was always looking forward to having a baby. Just obviously not in those circumstances, and it wasn't, like, exactly how I had planned it to be or expected it to be. But, yeah, obviously, like, I had all different thoughts going through my head. Like, I didn't really know what to do, honestly, in that moment. Because I was with him, like, in that moment, and he was...
Oh, you were with him when you took the test?
Yeah, when I took the test.
Did you take it because you had missed a period, or...?
Yeah, I was running late on my period, and I honestly did have a weird feeling, but I wasn't even ready to take a test. He was the one that wanted me to take the test. And I was like, there's just no way. Like, there's no way. You just never think it's actually going to happen to you.
Right.
But yeah, I remember I had a weird feeling, and then I just, like, he's the one that made me take the test, and he was also very shocked, and, like, we both didn't really know what to expect or what to say.
Did he want to keep it as well, or was
he did not, no.
Okay. So did that put a strain on your relationship, like getting pregnant and you wanting it and him not wanting it?
Well, at first I didn't know. Like, I was like, I don't know what to do, and he was like, okay, well, like, I don't really want to do this. So then it was kind of, like, influencing my choice. But once I, like, got home and, like, kind of sat with myself and, like, really, like, thought about it, I was like, yeah, I just don't think that I can go through with, like, an abortion.
Yeah. Because you knew you wanted to be a mom.
Yeah, I did.
Even though you were young, how long had you been 21 before you...
Yeah, so I found out I was pregnant in February, and I turned 21 in November, so it was just a few months after.
Okay, and what were you doing for work at that time?
I was a hostess. I was working at a restaurant. I was working at Hell's Kitchen, and that was another reason he was like, you can't have a baby, like, you don't even have a real job, like, what are you going to do? Like, he didn't even have a real job. I think he was working at Costco or something. Not that that's not a real job, but,
right.
You know, like, we don't have careers. Young. Yeah, we're so young. Like, I was living with my mom at the time. He was living with his sister at the time. But, yeah, basically once I got to sit with it, like, on my own, I had just decided that that was the choice that I was going to make. And, like, I knew it was going to be hard, and I knew that I was just assuming the worst, obviously, that we were never going to be, like, together again, and that I was just going to be a single mom, whether he was going to be involved or not.
Yeah, because that was more important to you than the relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were initially upset that you got pregnant young.
Yeah.
Like, even now, do you wish that you
I don't think that my age really was what made me upset. I think it was just, like, the situation that I was in with him.
Yeah.
Just that, like, it wasn't, like, obviously everybody wants to be married before, like, they get pregnant, or at least in a serious, like, committed relationship, and we weren't at that place. So that was what was making it really hard for me, and not knowing if he was going to want to be involved or not.
Yeah. Did you guys get back together or, like, have a better relationship at all?
Yeah, so once I told him that I was going to keep it, he was really upset, and he was really, like, resentful towards me. So we really didn't talk much for, like, the first half of my pregnancy. And then once I was, like, 5 or 6 months, he came around and decided that he wanted to try things out, and he wanted to be a family, and he wanted to be together. And it just didn't work. Mm-hmm. And, like, I was already, like, used to being without him, and I was, like, stress-free and, like, just kind of accepted it and, like, just doing my thing. So then once he came back into my life, there was just so much, like,
negative
trauma, and just, like, I couldn't trust him. So I would have rather just been, like, enjoy my pregnancy and be stress-free whether he's there or not, and just not have to worry about, like, if he's being loyal to me or, like, things like that.
Mm-hmm. So what was the pregnancy experience like for you? Did you, like, have any physical symptoms? Did you experience any postpartum depression? Was it an easy pregnancy, or what was that like? I know you only have one.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to compare it to.
My pregnancy was great. I loved it. I loved being pregnant. I really had, like, no issues, no serious, like, health issues, no real bad symptoms. Like, I did have the nausea, but I never actually physically got sick, so I felt like I had it pretty easy. The birth was hard. I ended up having a C-section, like an emergency C-section, so that was super traumatizing for me, and, like, took me a while to get over that.
Why was it an emergency C-section?
So I was induced at 39 weeks because I had high amniotic fluid. And I wish I had done more research back then, but at the time I just, like, went into it blindly, and I was just, like, not very educated on all, like, the doctors and, like, medical, like, the whole system and everything. But I was induced for high amniotic fluid, and I just feel like my baby was just not ready to come out yet. Like, I wasn't even technically, like, full term. I could have gone, like, 1 or 2 more weeks, but my doctor was kind of pushing for me to be induced for, like, safety reasons, supposedly, but so I was induced, and then she came out. She was coming out, but she was face up rather than face down. So basically her face would have been, like, scraped against my pelvic bone if I was to give birth that way, which was, like, a high risk of her getting, like, damage to, like, her nose or, like, her breathing or anything like that. So they had to rush me into a C-section. And, yeah, that was just something I never thought would happen to me either. Like, I had never done any research on C-sections. Like, I was just planning on just, like, doing the whole thing, like, naturally, like, the way that everybody does it. So that was really, like, shocking, and it took me a long time to, like, accept the fact that I didn't get to, like, have a normal birth.
Mm-hmm. You wanted a normal birth?
Yeah, I did. Not a natural birth, but I just wanted to, like, I was scared my whole pregnancy of that. Mm-hmm. And then, like, the last month, I was like, okay, like, I'm ready. Like, I want to do it. Like, I want to push her out. Yeah. And I didn't even get to push. So that's what made me so upset, was, like, I didn't even get to, like, experience, like, trying that.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, you're leading up to the whole time.
Do you feel like you had a support system through all of it? Like,
oh, yeah. Okay. For sure, yeah.
With
and
your
I'm
family?
So thankful, yeah. And even his family. Yeah, my mom was, like, my number one supporter, and my sister, too. Like, I'm really close with them. My dad, my family, everybody is really supportive and helpful.
So they were okay with you having the baby, even though, like, you weren't on good terms with her dad?
Very much so, yeah. My mom was very much, like...
wanted to be a grandma?
Yeah. Okay. She was super excited. She was definitely the most excited when she got the news.
Yeah.
Which made me more excited. But, yeah, she was very supportive of my choice.
Okay. And you said his family was supportive as well? Like, even though he didn't want it, did they want it?
Yeah,
I keep saying it, but I think of it as...
At that time, it was an it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, it was a little rocky with his family because I didn't even really, like, know them on, like, a personal level, really. Like, they had just known really of me. Like, I never
Really?
He never really brought me around them
That's
like
rough.
that. So, yeah, so, like, basically my first real introduction to his family is, like, I'm pregnant and we're not together. So that did take a while for us to, like, build a relationship and get on terms to, like, the terms that we're at now. It's been a really long process.
How old is she now? You said she's 5?
She's turning 5, yeah, in a couple weeks.
Okay. So she spends time with her dad and his family as well?
Yeah.
Is it split evenly, or is she with you more often, or?
She's definitely with me more, but she spends, like, at least 2 to 3 nights with him. And then his mom will take her for, like, every other weekend sometimes. Like, she'll take her for 2 or 3 days at a time. So his mom and his dad are both very involved and very, very helpful also. So, yeah, I'm blessed with both of our families. Are really supportive and really helpful.
Yeah, it's there's a bunch of reasons behind this, and I feel like this will become something that's studied on, like, a sociological or anthropological level, like, later on in the future. But it's becoming more and more common for kids to grow up in separate households or with divorced parents, or, you know, in a situation like yours where they were never married and then just didn't end up staying together, or maybe just with one parent and the other one's not in the picture at all.
Yeah.
Personally for you, you know, not that you're a sociologist or anthropologist, but just because you've been through that experience, why do you think that is? Like, what are your feelings about kids growing up in separate households? Do you wish you was growing up in a household where, like, you were still with her dad, or in, like, at least a partnership? Are you okay with the fact that it's separate? Do you have feelings about that?
Yeah,
you know, for yourself and for society?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for, like, a while after she was born, I had wished that we were, like, or even still to this day, I kind of wish, like, you know, she had that, like, solid, like, normal, like, foundation where it's, like, a 2-parent household and she's, like, in one house rather than going, like, back and forth all the time, because that can be a lot, like, especially for someone that young to understand. But then I look at it as, like, she didn't have to go through the separation and, like, that confusion. Like, she never knew us together. So in that way, that's kind of, like, a good thing for her, because she didn't have to, like, unlearn that situation. Right. But, yeah, especially, like, when she started school, I was, like, telling his mom, I was like, that's just, like, I kind of feel bad that she has, like, separated parents, and, like, what if she goes to school and she starts, like, realizing, like, you know, her mommy and daddy are together and stuff like that. And his mom was like, yeah, you don't realize how much more common it is nowadays, like, for kids to be in separate households. Like, it's very, very common. And, yeah, I mean, I know that's more normal nowadays, but it still sucks.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, for me, I grew up with my parents together, and they separated when I was in high school. And that was really hard for me. Like, right. I took it really hard, because that's just, like, all you know your whole life. And then, like, it's just a huge change.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of research on, like, how growing up in divorced households, right, like, whether it's early on, how that affects you when you witness a divorce of your parents, how it affects you. So, like, I grew up with a single mom, basically. Like, my parents separated when I was, I don't know, 2 or 3, super early on. And so I'm like her, where that's all I ever knew. Like,
so
I
you
never
don't even remember them being together?
I have no memory of them being together at all. It was always separate households. I mean, I think I turned out okay, so I think maybe not. But
do you feel like that's a good thing, though? Would you rather it be that way than, like, having that trauma?
They would have been, yes. They fought even being separated. Like, I remember them fighting, and I don't want to ever say, like, pitting us against each other one.
Yeah, but even if they don't do it intentionally, they do.
Right. Like, you can tell how they feel about each other.
Yeah.
You know, and I could see from a young age that they didn't get along. It was never, like, well, maybe there was some resentment, but it was never, like, toxic to the point where they were, like, trying to get us to not like the other parent. But there were obvious things where I could tell, you know, why my dad was irritated with my mom or why my mom was irritated with my dad. And then it was like when those things would come up. So with my dad, I could see and recognize what irritated him about my mom.
Yeah.
But I didn't really come to understand that side of it until I was older because I feel like it was more complex. I'm trying to, like, say enough without saying too much, but my mom would get irritated with my dad because, you know, maybe she felt like he was doing too much or he was dramatic or he was controlling. And when I was younger, I could recognize those things in my dad because it felt like he was trying to control me and be possessive over me.
Yeah.
And I am, like, not the personality type that can be controlled or told what to do from a young age. Like, I struggled with it even with my parents. Like, I know it's normal to be told what to do when you're a kid, and it's not like I was disobedient or a bad kid or anything. Like, I was probably the straightest edge out of all of us. You know, there's 3 kids, but I just don't like being told what to do. I don't like being controlled. I don't like being challenged. I have, like, this rebellious part of my personality, so I could always feel that from my dad. So my relationship with my dad was more strained when I was younger because I could recognize the things that my mom was irritated by in him at a young age. With my dad, I felt like he got irritated with my mom because he is more emotional and she's less emotional and, like, doesn't wear her emotions on her sleeve. Like, it's kind of flip-flop roles, I guess, if you're thinking in terms of standard, like, gender roles. And I just always looked at my mom as she's laid back and she's not on my ass all the time. And so it was easier to be around her because, like, she just let me do what I want and we never fought and whatever. And then when I was older, like, I feel like that started to be more of a problem for me because I wanted more emotion from my mom. And it became a point of contention. And then I started gravitating more towards my dad. And I also, I have a weird parent situation. So I tell you this and anyone else who's going through, you know, issues or whatever you might call it, because I really feel like I've turned out okay. And I have a very complex, like, family life. So I have 3 siblings and we actually all have different dads. My biological dad lives in Puerto Rico. I don't really have a relationship with him. I didn't know he was my biological father until I was 11.
Oh, wow.
So my dad that I call dad, his name's Robert. It's probably easier to just refer to them as their names because it gets weird, but it's weird calling them by their names. So Robert is my dad that I call dad, that has raised me since before I was born. I have his last name. He met my mom when she was 4 months pregnant with me. So he chose to stick around and raise me knowing that my mom was already 4 months pregnant.
Yeah.
And it takes, like, a certain kind of person to do that. Those kind of men just, like, don't fucking exist.
They're really hard to come by,
Yeah, like, you have people that get someone pregnant and don't want to take care of their own kid.
Yeah.
And so he met my mom and fell in love with her and committed to raising me. And, you know, my first half of my life, I didn't know that. I had no idea. And I'm glad that I didn't know that, honestly. Like, I don't think it's something that I really could have grasped and understood and appreciated. Even at 11, like, it was
That's
hard.
so confusing,
It was confusing, and it didn't really change anything for me because I'm like, my dad's my dad.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know who this other person is. Like, he started to try and get in contact with me. His name's Danny.
Your biological dad.
Yeah. He started to try and get in contact with me and stuff, but I'm, like, fucking 11.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
So this is how you found out? Was through...
She brought me into a room when I was, like, 11 and was like...
Oh, so she told you.
She told me, yeah.
Yeah, that's
and then
gotta be
she
so
told
hard
him.
for her, too.
Yeah,
like, how
I'm
do you
sure.
even know when...
Right.
is the right time to say that
Right.
to your kid.
Right. I think it was hardest for my dad, actually.
Yeah,
because
I'm sure
he was
that was
nervous.
hard for him, too.
Yeah, he didn't know how I was going to take it, if it was going to
Yeah.
change our relationship. I remember he called me after crying and was just telling me how much he loved me. And I'm like, Dad, like, you're still my dad. Like,
yeah.
it doesn't change anything. Like, it's all good.
Yeah.
And I just kind of felt overwhelmed because everyone else was emotional. And I was like, I mean, I'm just going to go to school and, like,
go
keep
about
doing
my life.
Yeah. And everyone was like, oh, you handled it so mature. And I'm like, well, that's because,
I don't
like,
know
I
how
just
else
don't
to
know what to
handle it.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't change anything for me. I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense why I have brown eyes and they both have green eyes. But, like, that's about it, you know? And so I kind of went on a tangent. But my dad that I call Dad Robert is Caden, my younger brother, who's our middle brother.
Okay.
His biological dad. So me and
Okay.
Caden were raised together.
Sharing a
I
dad.
grew up thinking like we're full siblings,
Yeah.
like that we have the same dad. And so like there was just a lot connected to it
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh, he's technically my half sibling,
Yeah.
and I have a whole other half family out in Puerto Rico.
So he must have been like a baby then when they split up?
Caden?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Because
mean,
she had him after you.
Yeah. So they were together and they had him and then they split shortly after.
Yeah.
So I think he was 2 and I was 3.
Oh, you guys are close.
Yeah. So we're 13 months apart.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So she like had a baby and then got
that's
pregnant
crazy.
again. Yeah. So all that to say that like, you know, finding that information out didn't change anything for me. And I was used to growing up in separate households. Like, I did the back and forth, and it was hard.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to lie, that was hard.
Yeah.
But mostly because it's like I would leave shit at the other parent's house.
Yeah, because you don't have one house.
Yeah.
Like, you're living out of 2 different places.
Yeah. And then I would get in trouble because I went to a Catholic school, and so we had uniforms, and if I didn't have something for my uniform, we'd have to go back, and, like, that was stressful for me, and I'd have to pack different things. Like, that part was hard, you know, but it didn't take an emotional toll on me.
Yeah.
It was more just like, this is an inconvenience.
Physically hard, yeah.
Yeah. And then, so before I even found out about my biological dad, you know, I was 11 when I found out about that. My mom, you know, she had dated some guys through childhood and things like that I remember, but she got pregnant and remarried when I was like 8 or 9 to my stepdad, which is Cash's dad, my youngest brother's dad. So, you know, when Chad came into the picture, I didn't know about Danny.
Yeah.
I just knew my dad and Chad.
And now you have another dad, yeah.
And then there was another one.
And now there's another one.
So then there was another one.
They're just throwing all these dads at you.
Yeah, all these dads. And so Chad came into the picture, and then that's kind of like a weird dynamic because it's a step parent, right? But he came into the picture when I was young. So we struggled again because I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
But he came in as like an authority figure when I was young, and so he is trying to help my mom raise me and raise my brother. And so there was some strain on that relationship too. It was just like so many different like relationships to manage, you know? And I feel like that kind of, even though it was hard, even though it's a lot to process when you're young, it gives you a lot of emotional intelligence because you're being exposed to these different types of relationships and processing them at a young age. I'm not saying all of it was healthy, but I feel like I'm an older soul now and I understand situations better because I was exposed to different situations when I was younger.
And different personalities.
Yeah. And despite, you know, what is a very complex family life, I do feel like I'm a decent person. I feel like I was raised well. And, you know, both of my parents have instilled different values in me. But as I got older, I think this is what it comes back to, the tangent that I went on, is as I got older, I became so close to my dad because I started to realize the gravity of the decision that he made to be a part of my life and how different I would have been as a person if he didn't step up. Yeah, because he loves me so much. like, so fucking much. Like, I know how much my dad loves me.
So cute.
And, well, to stick around.
Yeah.
You know, he loved me before I was even born.
Yeah.
And he told us all the time growing up how, like, we're the best thing that ever happened to him.
So cute.
And, you know, him being a part of my life has given me this standard for men, you know,
Yeah.
and, like, what it actually looks like for someone to love you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Because not just how he loves me, but how much he had to love my mom to be
Yeah.
there for her and to show up for her, and then to, even though they separated, to continue to
still-
stick around
yeah.
with me. You
When
know,
he didn't even have to.
And he
but
didn't
he just
have
chose
to.
to because he wanted to.
right? And
Yeah,
so
that's like a top of the line, like, type of person, type of
Yes.
man.
yeah, and well, so he was a foster child
Oh,
too,
wow.
which also probably makes a difference
Yeah,
because
for sure.
he doesn't know his biological parents.
Yeah.
And he was in a foster home, but his foster parents ended up adopting him. So he grew up with them his whole life,
Yeah.
but wasn't related to them.
Yeah.
So I just got so lucky.
Yeah, it sounds
know?
like you were really blessed
Yeah.
with, like, all the parents that you
Yeah.
had in your life.
Yes.
Especially him.
Yeah, I can't even explain how different I would have been as a person
Yeah.
if I didn't have my dad. And so this is a testament, like, to anyone, to any dad
Yeah.
that shows up, like, your role is so important.
So important.
And I feel like, so this is back to our original question, which is talking about how common it is to be in a single parent household or whatever the case may be. Like, there's, I feel like, a decline in the value of family
Yeah.
in, like, our society.
For sure.
And I think that there's a lot of different things that play into it, whether it's the type of music that we listen to that's all about,
Yeah.
you know, like, fuck men and this
Yeah.
and that, and, you know, just the increase in, like, hookup culture and
Yeah.
situationships and the lack of commitment. Like, I feel like that's going to have such serious repercussions in, like, I don't know, 100 years when
like,
you
way
look
down
at
the line.
Yeah. Because what standard is that setting for, like, your daughter?
Exactly.
You know, and what she's gonna
No,
accept
that's what
as
I'm
normal.
saying. Yeah.
Do you worry about things
It really
like that?
scares me. Yeah, and I do not want her to go through what I went through. Even though everything turned out fine and, like, she's really blessed. She has, like, 2 parents that love her, 4 grandparents that love her. She has, like, she's so spoiled. She's the only grandbaby on both sides, so we really lucked out. Like, she's very, very spoiled and very loved, but yeah, I just don't want her to go through a situation like that. I don't think anybody wants that for their kids. Like, you don't want your baby to end up being, like, a single mom, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it does scare me. And yeah, I think that families breaking up, I think that people just give up, like, too easy now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just here, like, where we live at, or if it's everywhere, but I've noticed that here, yeah. I just think that it's so easy for people to just walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's easy for people to just give up on relationships rather than, like, fighting for it.
It's sad.
It is really
It's
sad.
really
Yeah,
sad.
it makes me really sad.
Emotional.
I know.
You know, like.
And I had lost hope for a while, honestly, like, when I was going through that situation and after I had her. But I'm pretty hopeful now because I do see some, like, healthy relationships. And I think that it just takes 2 people that, like, really just don't want to give up
on each other.
You just have to find someone, yeah.
And that's what I think so many people don't realize. I had the experience of getting, like, a communications degree, right? So that is basically a degree in interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
It's like a degree
So
in being
important.
a better person.
Yeah.
Like, showing you what makes a successful interpersonal relationship, whether it's platonic, romantic, an acquaintance, a coworker, a boss, whatever. You learn how to navigate relationships. And it taught me about basically the number one thing that determines if a relationship is going to last or not is how they deal with conflict.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, that is so big. Love is not
It's
enough.
very important. Yeah.
Having things in common is not enough. Having history is not enough. It's how you deal with the hard times.
Yeah.
Not the good times, not everything in between, but how do you deal with conflict? When things come up, do you work through it together? Do you turn away from each other? Do you get resentful? Do you figure out ways, like, to work through it? Like, love is a choice. It's not just a feeling. And you hear it all the time, but people don't really understand the gravity of what that means, because you're choosing somebody when it doesn't really feel good to choose them.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like, fuck, this is going to be more work.
Yeah.
Or this is going to be me having to be vulnerable. This is going to be me having to be emotional or to deal with somebody else's emotions. Not that anyone's responsible for them, but, you know, you have to work through them. And a lot of people aren't comfortable doing that because it's scary to work through hard things. Because there's a risk
harder.
there.
Yeah, it's easier to just walk away.
But then, like, is it easier? What are all the emotions that come with walking away from something that you might regret walking away from?
Yeah, I mean, of course it's not, like, easier in the long run, but I think in that moment, like, it's just so many people's first resort is just walk away.
I know.
Like, or just give up.
Throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And they also, I feel like, do that because they feel like they have so many options.
Yeah.
Like, you know, or,
That's
I'm young, or, like, especially with social media. I've talked about this on multiple episodes. And because I'm studying it in school, it just comes up more frequently. But this perception of endless options, you know? Like, I don't have to stick around and deal with this because I could go
find a new one,
Yeah, but then you run into another person with all their baggage.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's just scary because I feel like there's not as much value placed on home life and family and working through relationships. I'm not saying we need to move back to, like, a more traditional society because there's a bunch of problems that came with that.
Yeah.
But as far as, like, valuing moms and valuing babies and life and
for sure.
committed relationships and partnerships, like, that is super valuable.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it just doesn't exist as much anymore, and it's normalized to not value it. It's normalized to be a single mom, which is not, I don't want to say being a single mom is this terrible bad thing, because I don't want any single mom to feel like they're falling short in any way. But obviously,
I don't think
ideally,
it's a bad thing, but obviously nobody ever grows up wanting to be a single mom. Like, that's not the goal for anybody. I think.
Right. So, being a single mom, like, was it scary, like, raising a child while still figuring out who you were? Because I'm a different person than I was when I was 21.
No, for sure, yeah. And I feel like, the past 5 years have just been, like, a huge roller coaster of just trying to juggle, like, work and then, like, trying to make time for myself. But obviously she's my main priority. Like, she's the thing I have to worry about constantly and, like, make sure that she's good before, like, anything else. So yeah, dating, like, when I started dating, I think she was, like, around a year old, and it was, like, hard, and it was just weird, and it was, like, kind of, like, almost like I didn't even want to start dating. Like, I did, but I didn't, because it was just so much harder. Like, I'm obviously very limited on time, especially when she's still, like, that young. And it's hard to, like, find someone that's understanding of that, and, like, understanding of you have to put the baby first. So then I'm, like, have to open up my options to, like, dating other people that have kids. And then it's, like, that's just a whole nother thing. That's a whole different game. So yeah, I tried that. But I think that now as she's older, it has become a little bit easier. And now she's in school, so I do have a little bit more time for myself. But yeah, I think it's always going to be, just being a parent is hard in general. Like, you're always constantly worrying about your baby and if they're okay. But yeah, I think we've had a pretty good balance.
What's it like going through? So I can tell you, I don't know if I'm just more of an emotional person, but
I am too.
Yeah, water
definitely.
signs.
Yeah, I'm very emotional.
I'm super emotional, but and especially, like, the amount of different life changes I've gone through since I was 21 to now, and I'm 25 and a half. Oh, today is my half birthday, actually.
Happy half birthday.
So I'm officially 25 and a half
today. Are you Pisces?
Today. I am, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So the things that I've gone through from 21 to now, like, there's been some pretty big life changes and I would define them as traumatic for me. I haven't had a terrible life, but they were really hard for me to get through. So I can't imagine going through any one of those things while also having a kid.
Yeah.
Is it hard for you to go through, like, trials and tribulations of life while you have a kid? Do you feel like you have time to process it, or how?
No, I feel like I have to, like, suppress everything and then, like, eventually just break down. Because, like, yeah, I can't just, even if my daughter, like, catches me crying, she's, like, she knows, like, she can see what's going on. And she's like, what's wrong? And I just have to, like, hold it in for a second and just come back to it later. Because, like, you can't, I don't know. It's just, like, you don't want your baby to see you crying. Because you know how it feels to see your mom crying or, like,
Yeah.
see your parent crying. Like, it makes you, like,
Nervous.
feel like everything's not okay. Yeah. Like,
Right.
we're going down. Like, what's going on? Like, if
The
she's
ship is
crying, should I be
sinking.
crying? She's like, what's wrong, Mommy? I'm like, nothing,
We're
I'm fine.
going down. It's crazy. She's 4. I'm
But
sure
you
she's
know, like, when I don't know if you've seen your mom cry, but it just makes you
Never.
feel, like, weird. You've never seen your mom cry?
She's just not like that. I mean, maybe.
Oh, that's a scary feeling.
I mean, maybe I have. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
I mean, I've only seen her cry, like, I could probably count it on one hand how many times I've seen her cry, and it was, like, once when her sister died, so obviously that's, like,
Yeah, when
different,
my grandpa
but
passed. Yeah, I've seen her
but
cry.
it sucks. Like, it feels weird as a kid, like,
Yeah.
seeing your parent cry. Like, you're just, like...
Well, and, like, if they're an empathetic kid,
She's
they're naturally...
very empathetic.
Yeah, they're going to want to, like, fix it.
Yeah, she's very
know.
comforting. She's like, what's wrong, Mommy? Like, don't
Yeah,
cry.
that would make me
Everything's
cry
okay.
more.
I know. Like, you're so
Like,
cute.
Yeah, no, that's one of the reasons I feel like I know I'm not ready for a kid, because I gotta let it out.
Yeah.
I have to. I mean, I'm already going through shit now, and I feel like, you know, between being in school and working and doing the podcast.
Yeah, you're
going to
juggling
the
so many
gym
things, and then, like, you throw that in there, and that's, like, that has to be your main thing.
Right. And I don't have a kid, and I'm already struggling. Like, I feel like I have to suppress shit or my life stops.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
No,
have
I
time
know.
to sit and cry. I don't have time to sit and process everything that just happened to me.
Yeah.
Like, I can't.
I know.
can't. I literally, like, woke up this morning.
You're like, I have shit to do.
I have shit to do.
We'll have to deal with this
Yes,
later.
I literally tell.
Yeah, I know.
I'm in therapy, so that helps. And I'm on Zoloft, which also helps.
Yeah.
But I literally talk to grief as if it's a person, because maybe I'm schizophrenic. I don't know. But that helps me. Like, I literally talk to grief like, I promise I'm not ignoring you.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back. We can deal with this, but it's got to be between 8 and 10 p.m.
Yeah.
tonight.
You have to schedule it.
I have to schedule
Yeah,
it,
I
because
know.
I'm like, I can't suppress it because I physically can't. I just feel things. If I suppress it,
I'm
I'll
the
end
same
up crying
way,
in class.
but then it's like sometimes it's like subconsciously you're suppressing things.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
it just gets to a point where you just like explode, or
Yes.
like you just
Or
like
you take
break
it out.
down, yeah.
Yes.
And you're like, why am I even crying? Oh wait, I forgot.
Right,
Like
because I just went through
all this shit just happened to me. Yeah.
So, yeah, I have respect for you, because I feel like I don't know how you keep it together as a person, or any parent, really. Like, maybe growing up in separate households is beneficial for you in that way, because then at least you have some time when she's with her dad. But then again, having a partner that can support you and be there for you is important
Has
in
to
those
be,
moments.
yeah, so much
you know?
easier.
Right. So you were talking about dating and how it's more difficult for you because you have a kid. Do you feel like men have a certain perspective of you, or judge you, or look at you a certain way when they find out that you have a kid?
I feel like, yeah, when I'm like newly dating somebody, I mean, I'm very open about like her, and I post her all the time, so it's not like something that like, if I go on a date with somebody, it's not something that they shouldn't know. Like, it's very much out there. But yeah, I feel like when I'm first getting to know somebody, or like when I'm first introduced to somebody, like I kind of get like a little bit worried in the back of my head that might be like a deal breaker for them, or like if they've never dated someone with a kid, like how are they going to handle that, or like maybe they'll realize like that they don't want to deal with that down the line. That kind of worries me, but I've been pretty lucky, and I've made, I think, pretty good choices for the most part as far as like who I've dated.
Mm-hmm. Have you had a relationship since you've had her?
Yeah, I had one serious relationship, which was in 2021, I believe, or 2020. Yeah, and he was a great guy. I ended up introducing him to my daughter. And he was amazing with her, and he loved her, and he was really good with her, and he was, like, really good all around. He just wasn't the right person for me, I realized. But, yeah, he was ready to, like, settle down and, like, get married and, like, move in, and everything was just happening so fast, and I was kind of just, like, I kind of freaked out. Like, I was like, I don't know. Like, I do want all these things, but I just knew that it wasn't with him.
Right. Which is hard.
Yeah,
There's
it was.
That
That's why
that.
it was really hard for me to, like, accept that and, like, act on that and decide that, yeah, I had to just, like, walk away, because I knew that he could give me everything that I wanted, but I just didn't want it with him.
And that's fine.
Yeah, and I honestly felt like an instant relief once I, like, did break up with him. I just felt like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders.
Right.
But, yeah, I did experience a good, healthy relationship with him, and, like, she saw me with him, and she liked it. Like, it was good. It was a good experience.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, and I hope that I find that again, just with, like, my person, with the right person.
Yeah. I remember my mom dating, I want to say, a few different people. And they were all serious relationships, I think. I mean, when you're young, you can't really remember how long, you know, but I remember she dated someone that was not a good person. I remember him not being a good person. Like, I have memories of them fighting, and this is from when I'm like 4 or 5 years old, like around your daughter's age.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit older, but not much, because she dated some people in between Chad, and so it couldn't have been that long. But she was with this guy, and she had lived with him, so I remember being at his house and have a lot of memories there. And I remember, like, knowing that it wasn't good from a young age, because I would see them yell, I would see them fight. I don't even know if she remembers, but, like, I remember seeing him get physical with her one time. Like, that memory stays in my head.
Yeah.
I don't really know if it had an impact on me.
Yeah.
I guess there's no way to gauge that, because I still had my dad around, but, like, I remember I would want to be at my dad's a lot at that time. Yeah. Like, I would call my dad and be like, I want to come over there. And I remember, like, it would upset my mom and feeling guilty. Like, I specifically remember there was one night where I was down on the couch by myself and they were upstairs. I don't remember if they were fighting or what it was, but I remember feeling sad and feeling alone. I don't mean to say this to make my mom feel bad, but I have a core memory of this, because you do have memories from that young. And I remember calling my dad and asking if he would come pick me up. And my mom was upset, because obviously my dad reached out to my mom, and she was like, we can watch a movie, we can order this, we can order that. Yeah. And I remember feeling bad, feeling guilty, for wanting to go to my dad's. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I want to go to dad's. Like, no, I want to go to dad's. And I felt, like, so bad. Yeah. For hurting my mom.
Because you could tell that it was hurting her.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I remember also, like, not wanting my dad to leave when he would be at my mom's. Like, I remember being super attached to my dad when I was younger.
Yeah.
And then she dated this other guy that was in the picture for, like, a little bit, and then he wasn't. And then she met Chad, and
that's why it's so hard, because, I don't want to bring everyone around her, you know? Like, I have to really be careful as far as, like, who I spend my time with. But, I'm to the point where, like, if I am dating, like, I want it to be something serious. Like, I just don't want to waste any more of my time.
Right. And, I mean, I'm assuming you also have different standards for dating, because you have a daughter.
Sure.
You know, I wonder if having a daughter instead of a son makes things different.
Oh, definitely. You know? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it does, because, I'm always thinking, like, what I want. Just everything I do. I'm like, would I want her to do this? Like, probably not. But, I think that who you see your parents with definitely affects you, like, growing up.
Yeah. Did watching your parents get divorced affect you think?
Yeah, it did, for sure. And when I started going to therapy, that was one thing that I came to realize very quickly was that I just never thought that any of my issues, like, stemmed from my parents for some reason. I just didn't want to blame them because I think, like, they did everything right. Like, they took care of me. They were both there for me. They were both in my life. Like, and then once I started therapy, I was like, she was just asking me all these questions, and she kind of, like, got it out of me. And I was like, I just, like, came to, like, a realization, and I was like, wow, like, I was trying to defend them. And I didn't realize that, a lot of things that they did affected, like, who I am now.
Right. So what you're talking about is, like, so important because I personally think that trend that we were talking about, how family's not valued and there's less commitment and whatever, is a result of people not dealing with childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And trauma doesn't always have to mean, like, sexual assault or rape or divorce. Like, it could just be little traumas over the course of life, like not getting enough emotional validation from a parent or feeling like you're alone and don't have anybody to rely on because they weren't emotional enough with you, or seeing them fight a lot. Like, there's little ways that you're affected by it. And then you don't realize how that then translates into your relationships. And people get defensive because I was the same way. I started getting really bad anxiety and depression like my senior year of high school, maybe my junior year. I don't really remember it so much before that. I mean, I guess I've had it a little bit since I was small because I'm just empathetic, but it started to really take form in high school. And I remember talking to my psychology teacher about it, and he was like, I really think you should read this book. Like, I really think that you should read this book. And it was called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And I'm like, no, I don't think it applies to me. Like, I mean, like you, like, they did everything right. I went to Coronado. Like, I had a good childhood. They were both there for me. We weren't, like, impoverished. Like, I had a relatively normal childhood. And he's like, I still think that you should read this book. And I read the book, and I was like, oh, my God.
That one hit.
Like, that one opened the door. And it's not easy because then you have to
accept
cope.
That. Yeah.
And it made me resentful.
Yeah.
And, like, angry.
Me too. I felt the same way when I came to realize that.
Yeah. And I'm, like, 18 years old. I'd lived my whole life. And now I'm seeing these patterns that I have because of certain things in childhood. And I'm like, fuck you.
I know.
You did this shit to me, and now I have to work through it because you didn't.
Yeah.
Because you didn't go to therapy.
But if you don't work on it and you don't fix it, then you're going to pass it down to your kids, and it's just it's going to be a cycle.
Someone has to break the cycle.
Yeah.
And I hope that I'm the one to do it. I think that it, I still come with my baggage, and I still come with my fucked up shit. Yeah. But, being aware of it is hard and it's scary because it took me years of therapy and reading more books and building relationships back up to be able to accept it and then move on from it.
Yeah.
And be able to humanize my parents and be like, you know what? Now I get that you did the best that you can, but I can't do it when I'm hurt from you. You know, when somebody's hurting you, even if it's like later on and you realize the ways that they hurt you, it's hard to just be like, oh, I get it. You know, you went through shit. You did the best you could. It's all good. No, you go through a stage of being angry.
Yeah.
And so that was hard for me. But you can tell people who have worked through it and people that haven't.
Yeah.
And the people that haven't worked through their childhood shit or realize, like, their faulty relationships with their parents fucking wreak havoc on people's lives.
Yeah.
And they do it mercilessly because there's no awareness.
And
because they have no awareness.
Daughter's dad is one of those. Like, he needs to come to that realization because...
Right, and you still have love for them.
Yeah, I do, and I feel sorry for him. Exactly. Because I know what his problem is, but nobody's going to get through to him, like, until he just grasps it himself. Yeah.
That's what's so hard, is you're like, you can see it.
Yeah.
You can connect the dots and be like, if you could just see this, or if you would just hear me out, or go to a therapist, or do this, a whole world would open up to you. But they don't think anything's wrong with them.
Yeah.
They don't think that there's anything to fix. They don't think it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's so hard. 2 final questions. What would be your advice to people who are thinking about having kids?
To wait.
Everybody
No, I think, like, obviously people that are, like, married or, like, you know, in a healthy situation and, like, if you want to have a baby, like, yeah, I think go for it because I think it is really hard, and I don't think anyone can ever be fully prepared for that, no matter, like, what your situation is. Like, as a first-time parent, like, nobody knows what to do. But it is very rewarding. Like, it's honestly, like, it's just a different experience. Like, it's like nothing else. And, like, the love you get, the love that you feel and the love that you receive is like nothing else that you've ever felt. But definitely wait if you can. I think wait, because once you have them, like,
There's no going
there's
back.
no going back. Yeah, you have them forever.
Right. And then what would be your advice to other single moms that are in a similar situation to you right now?
Just keep going, because I know sometimes, like, I want to give up, and I'm just like, this is just never going to end. Like, this is so hard. Like, feeling sorry for myself, but yeah, you just have to keep pushing, keep going, and it gets better.
Yeah.
Because the first, like, year or two was really hard for me, but I think that I've come a long way.
Is there anything else you wanted to add that I didn't already cover?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for coming on and
Yeah, of
sharing
course.
personal details about your life and your experience. If you guys have any more questions for Natalie or would like to continue the conversation, I will have her contact information available on all of my social media platforms. And I will see you again in 2 more weeks to talk more elephants.